So this is now the highlights of the breakout session that we had last Monday evening, my time here. And it's very different from the other breakout sessions, as what Allison said, because we meant to bring out the regulatory policy considerations in countries who have those already, and then to feature some of the countries who doesn't have it yet. And so we had really exhausted the 3 hours given to us. So this is the agenda that we had. So we had 2, 4, 6, 8 speakers initially, and then we had country presentations later on from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand. So this first presentation, part of the presentation, will be just to provide an overview of what each speaker showed or what they discussed with regards to their countries. So the first one was Dave Casey. He's the Genus Product Development Lead in China. And the talk is on porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome resistance. And then, so we learned that, of course, this is the gene editing removed binding site of the target protein and made heritably resistant pigs. So in China, there have been some regulations already placed for gene editing. So this was released in January 2022. And the first GE product was high oleic acid soybean. And and then we had a powdery mildew and resistant and high-yielding wheat, high-yielding corn, given safety certificate in May 2024. And in China, the MARA promotes modern seed industry and IPO review of S&T Innovation Board. So for gene-edited plants, if there is no foreign DNA, so the regulation comes as starting from research, there is intermediate test, safety certificate, and they actually skipped the environmental release and production test. So it's shorter if it's gene-edited plants. For animals, it's not yet fixed, but they are looking at the possibility of the PRP pig being tested right now for intermediate test. There will be application for environmental release, and the environmental release, hopefully, if it is approved, will be out by 2025, 2026, and then applying safety certificate by 2026. And then we had, of course, our the first country which has commercialized gene-edited fishes. This is Japan, presented by Kitaro Kato from Kindai University. So they have also released the first gene-edited tomato, GABA tomato, and then, yeah, of course, red sea bream and tiger puffer. In the pipeline are waxy corn, GABA tomato, the second type, and high growth Japanese flounder. So they ensure that there is an absence of food safety risk for this gene-edited fish. For determination of gene-edited products distribution, they make sure that there's no extracellular DNA or RNA, no residual transferred nucleic acid, submission of production methods and its processes, rearing facilities and methods, and all this. And currently, it was mentioned that these gene-edited fish are now sold in crowdfunding sales and online stores. The next one is from India, and our speaker talked about the gene editing researches ongoing in India, although it's not yet as big as what we have in other countries. So they're studying on mice and goat and buffalo, hopefully next time. So there is gene editing for expression of therapeutic proteins in goat milk, buffalo, and studies on myostatin gene knockouts in goats. The discussion also was on the use of testicular stem cells. It's really research focus that was mentioned, and they are still in the startup stage of gene editing for animals. Regulatory-wise, this was presented by Viva Ahuja, Dr. Viva Ahuja. And she mentioned that in 1989, India already has these rules for the manufacture, use, import, export of hazardous microorganisms, including genetically or engineered organisms or cells. And initially, this also covers new gene technologies, just like gene editing. There is currently a presence of government statutory bodies for advisory, approval, and monitoring. And later on, the gene-edited organisms regulatory framework and guidelines for risk assessment on plants and animals was recommended by the Recombinant DNA Advisory Committee and approved by DBT in May 2020. And in 2022, there was a notification that SDN1 and SDN2 are not regarded as GMOs. But for gene-edited animals, it will be considered as per rules in 1989 as yet, so they're still GMOs. And there's still current discussion on the guidelines. So we still are looking forward to the favorable decision on our part. The next one will be the regulation of gene editing in Australia. So the Australia Gene Technology Act of 2000 protects safety of people, the environment, and the possible risks of the technology and how to manage those. But from 2001 up to now, there have been 41 commercial plant release licenses, but none for GM animals yet. For the regulation of gene editing, we have SDN1 as non-GMO, SDN2 and SDN3 as GMOs. But there is a current discussion, and they call it the third review scheme. They maintain the process regulatory trigger, so it's still the process, and introduces additional risk tiering, amending key definitions and clarify scope, and hopefully they can be clarified as much based on science, and consider mechanism to better respond to changes in science. So the draft bill, this is a new legislation actually that they are putting together. I don't know, it's a bill. The draft bill is expected to be released in 2024. Now let's go to FSANS. This is with Shai Joseph, Office of Gene Technology, Food Standards, Australia, New Zealand. The animal biotechnology applications in food. So these are food derived from animal biotech. So first, the first attempt was on first cell-based food, and FSANS deemed that there is no food safety concerns, and second public comment will commence shortly. So the first review was, there was no safety concerns, and then they're still going to have the second public comment. Consumer research to gauge potential acceptability. There is sometimes up, sometimes down. So, but currently 62% are not confident on the safety of this cell-based food. There is also proposal 1055, which is being discussed right now to clarify definitions for gene technology and new breeding techniques. So the proposed approach would be outcomes-based definition. So compared to before, it was the process, regulatory process driving the regulation, the process, but now it is outcome-based definition. So new definitions for GM food, novel DNA protein, and null segregant. Explicit exemptions for food from null segregants, grafted plants, and etc. So currently, the mindset is if there is no novel DNA in the genome-edited animal, food from this animal will be excluded from the definition of GM food. Other provisions in the code may apply to these animals. Example is the novel food standard. And lastly, this is from Team Strabala, from Environmental Protection Authority of New Zealand. So it was a very exciting turnout because we know that in New Zealand there is a ban. So in early 2024, they have started to draft new legislation to better enable the use of GMOs in New Zealand. through the Ministry of Business, Innovation, and Employment. So GMOs will no longer be regarded as new organism in the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act. So they will be regulated in the new gene technology regulation, which is still being drafted. And it's going to be modeled from the Australian OGTR, where certain gene editing regulations and modifications will be exempt from regulation. So the new OGTR will be assisted by Maori Advisory Committee, particularly the valued Tonga species in New Zealand. I think these are the endogenous species. So this step would ease regulation regarding field tests of organisms modified by gene technology in New Zealand, and it could be operational by early 2025. This is a good news for all of us. So the second part will be during the initial stage, we sent out questionnaires to our audience, the Oceania Asia, and we asked them what are the main drivers to establish gene editing R&D. So the first one was disease resistance, followed by resistance and food production, and then animal welfare. And then the second one is what are the drivers to establish regulatory policies in gene-edited animals? So it is food safety, environmental safety, and third is public acceptance. And what are the current status concerns in establishing regulatory process? It says sometimes it's under discussion. It's a government mandate not to cater to new technologies and some concerns on cultural issues. So with that, we asked some of them to present their status. So we were able to get presenters from Bangladesh, Indonesia, Pakistan, Philippines, and Thailand. And to summarize, we have asked them to fill this sort of questionnaire and what are their needs and gaps. So they need to have new and improved animal genetics for milk, meat, and egg production, and of course, disease resistance. And basically, these are the foot and mouth disease and the African swine fever, which is now very giving a lot of problems in the Asian region. They want help on enabling regulatory environment to develop R&Ds and the regulation, and of course, capacity building. So these have been raised by all these 5 countries. And what are the opportunities? There is a potential to improve food production capacity in deprived areas. We know how important this is in these developing countries in Asia. And they need traits that would allow animal growth and productivity in extremely high temperatures. They need to eradicate devastating diseases of animals, so opportunities to eradicate. Not only so, this will be the whole of Asia. And I don't think Oceania has this problem. And they are really open for research collaboration and scientists or student exchange if possible. And these are now the regulatory status of these different countries. So the Philippines, we have gene-edited crops, SDN1 and SDN2 regulation. And as regarded as non-GMO, this has been, the regulation was out or released in 2021, I think, and they have drafted the GM animal regulation, but additional comments need to be addressed, so it's not yet out. In Thailand, we're happy to note that gene-edited crops are now with SDN1 and SDN2 are regarded as non-GM, and gene-edited animals are not yet clear. We're still hoping that SDN1 is going to be regarded as non-GM. In Bangladesh, the guidelines for SDN1 and SDN2 release is in place since 2023. There's none yet in animals, but strong research on gene-edited animals. In Indonesia, there's a lot of research on gene editing of catfish and zebrafish, and they're still developing their gene editing regulation. And in Pakistan, Pakistan has been planting GM cotton extensively since a long time ago, but there's still no regulatory framework on GM and gene-edited animals. So I close with this, and I thank Mark Tizard, who did a good job of moderating, and of course, Allison and Mariette during the breakout session. Thank you so much.